Hey folks, it's George Leoniak. Welcome to New Geometry. Today is the special 2/22/22 special edition of New Geometry. Today is going to be a follow-up on the Star Mother video I did of Dan Winter's work. This is the Star Mother. There's a whole video on this. You don't need to go back and watch that one before we do this one, but it's going to talk more about the implosion and non-destructive compression of charge that Dan talks about. After I did that video, I had some exciting breakthroughs and actually created another form that has this similar explosive or the same explosive properties to it. I know this looks huge here. I'll show you some photos of it. We're going to talk a lot about this, but that's the Star Mother over here. And this one I call the Star Child. So join me for this video. It's going to have multi-dimensional imagery and different things that I've been working on. Lots of different forms to talk about that are related to this Star Child that I'm really looking forward to sharing how those came about, and some pretty neat ones related to the infinite compression of charge. And this little model here, I'm really looking forward to sharing. That's going to be in the video too, as well as this neat little caduceus type of one, the caduceus type of one like this of the rhombic faces. So all this I'm going to be sharing. So join me. I just want to let you know what this rhombic tricontahedron. So if you're not familiar with that, let me jump to the sharing of the screen and just talk a little bit about, like I did in my previous video, I had this infinite implosion that I showed you over here on the iPad. I'm going to show you that in a second because it's really cool to go into these geometric structures infinitely based on the golden proportion. But first, I wanted to just go over the rhombic tricontahedron so you know what it is you're looking at as you look at this implosive pattern. So we're going to look at three different forms here in just a minute, or the three different views of the same form of the rhombic tricontahedron implosion pattern. Now, we're going to talk about Dan's in a little bit and how his works with the stellation of the Icosi and Dodecahedron. There's another stellation pattern that happens with the rhombic tricontahedron or the Star Child that I'll be sharing in a moment. But this is what the rhombic tricontahedron looks like from these different hexagonal, pentagon, and square views. But what is the rhombic tricontahedron, so you can understand a little bit more of the significance of that form? Well, it's a compound of the icosahedron and the dodecahedron together, where the edges meet across one another to create those rhombic faces. So for instance, this edge here on the icosahedron, let's say that's 1 inch. This edge on the dodecahedron would be the 0.618. And when we put those together, this would be the 1 inch, the 0.618 across. This is not the scale, sorry. But that would be a rhombic face that has both an icosa and dodeca. And there are 30 of those faces on the rhombic tricontahedron. I almost kind of like to think of this icosa dodeca as kind of two energies kind of coming together. Let's say a masculine, feminine energy, and they're birthing this rhombic tricontahedron Star Child through the union of the compound of the two of these. These are the golden circle templates. I have a lot of videos that I discuss how I go about creating these forms with these circular templates. Okay, so without further ado, that's the rhombic tricontahedron. It shares the vertices of the, whoops, this one should have 20 vertices here for the dodecahedron because it is on the inside of the other icosahedron, can be. So we've got, whoops, I just kind of, this one's, I got to redo the whole thing here. 12 faces for that one. Sorry about that. 12 faces, 30 edges for the dodecahedron, and 20 faces over here for the icosahedron. And the two together, of course, will create the 32 vertices of both. All right, let me jump out of this screen share. We're going to come back to this in a moment. But let me hop over to the iPad so I could show you those infinite explosion patterns that I've hand drawn basically on the iPad. It is digital, but they really are like hand drawing because I have to use the stylus or the Apple Pen here to pretty much draw every circle and line. There's no picking up and moving the object around to replicate it. And you can easily can draw these patterns all on your own, just using a compass and straight edge, which is just so cool to realize that these are patterns that you're able to do at home to contemplate infinite non-destructive compression of charge and an infinite expansion or contraction here. So this is, of course, the golden circle template. Now we're looking at it from that pentagon view, and I'm just going to zoom in. I'm at the maximum extent that we can go within this form right here. And as I slowly work my way in here, we're going to start going through basically the rhombic dodecahedron over and over and over again at every expansion of the phi circles that we're going into. So every phi circle, every red and blue passing that you see going on here is a rhombic dodecahedron that is the compound of that icosahedron and dodecahedron. So that's my fancy animation. And I would love to be able to get this infinite pattern going in a more sophisticated animation, but this is the best I could show you here, at least at this point. So quite a cool pattern. Now I did this for the other two patterns. So let me just hop over to the hexagon view here for you. And that looks like this. I know, as you know, in some of my videos, if you haven't seen any of my videos, I love to look at these patterns from multiple views and perspectives. And this is what the rhombic tricontahedron in phi proportion looks like, and going in and what the circle pattern will look like here. So here we are once again going infinitely, and this will go on infinitely. I mean, it must, potentially reach some sort of 0 point within this, who knows, but it will continue to go on and on and on through the rhombic tricontahedron, which again are outlined in red and blue. And it's like one hexagon of the smaller tricontahedron is actually the portion of the larger tricontahedron. So they're really overlapping in this pattern in 2D space that we're looking at. So that's what that one looks like. A really neat braiding system going on with those phi circles that are overlapping on the outside there. And previously in my other video on the star mother, I said that I had a little bit of problems constructing what I call the square view or the twofold symmetry, because, and I'll explain this in a little bit about how there's this jump with the stellation of the icosahedron, which it misses a few of these rings, but I'll share that in a moment. But because the rhombic tricontahedron is going basically every phi circle contains a rhombic tricontahedron, the square view was much easier to construct, and here they're in blue, red, and black. And a very cool rhombic diamond face, and another interesting circular pattern that is created from the overlapping of the phi circles on this one, all converging at the center. So I didn't keep going on further into that one because it is a tricky drawing to pull off, but I did a few layers there for you. So some really interesting, beautiful patterns. And to me, it was really interesting. I'm going to jump out of this because that's all we needed to do with that share. It's really interesting to me because, originally I was working with the flower of life pattern and thinking that that was going to be the pattern that I worked with, the seed of life. And then all of a sudden, this new pattern of the kind of this infinite expansion or infinite implosion circle drawings came about that are just mind-blowing to me because they take that scale of the flower of life, which is like one plane, and then give it this dimensionality because you have to adjust the size of the circles in phi proportion to go infinitely non-destructively into the middle of this embedding and braiding process where everything lines up within that spiralized pattern that these are meant to represent. So even though they look like strict, strong edge geometric forms, this is meant to be more of a vortex of compressive charge spiraling pattern. Dan Winter calls that pine cones kissing noses as they spiral compressively down to the center. Okay, so let me just come over to Dan Winter's Star Mother model again. So you could see how that one was constructed with the octahedron. This is all nestled in the middle of this. This is the golden circle template, the tetra, the star tetra, the cube. And then once we kind of get those, because remember there's 5 cubes in this dodecahedron, we're just really focusing on one series of the 5 that are in here. We then jump over to the small stellated dodeca, which will create the Icosa. The Icosa will go to the great stellated dodeca, and then the dodeca again. And then we will just alternate back and forth, small stellated Icosa, you know, to the great stellated dodeca, continuing on and on and on. And this, of course, is just basically Icosa dodeca on infinitely through that stellation pattern. Now, let me show you what's kind of emerged for the star child here, because I didn't really know, and I mean, I'm really studying these models to see what is the internal geometry. Like, the nice thing about Dan's is that it's really just built on those blue struts, and you know, they're all, those struts are in phi proportion to one another. This is a little bit more complex because it had these yellow and the red struts mixed into it. But it still worked because I was able to find what those between the rhombic tricontahedron. So for instance, how do we get from this rhombic tricontahedron to the next one, right? And these are the stellation processes that are in the between phases that bring it to that next concentric ring, that is the next concentric phi proportion ring. So this then was the first stellation. This little model here I'll show you is the first stellation of the rhombic tricontahedron. So this is taking each of those rhombic faces and increasing the height just a little bit on each face. And this is the first rhombic stellation. There are like 236 stellations of the rhombic tricontahedron. I thought, 59 was a lot with the icosahedron. The diagram for the tricontahedron, it's got a lot of possibilities, but I'm really focused on the ones that really are meaningful within this progression. So the next thing that goes from there is that by raising those up, it creates more of a decagon type of face along the top, these little corrugated structure here that's going around creating a decagon, which then allows the Icosa, the small stellated tricontahedron, which is this form here. Really love this form. I'm going to talk about it a bit more. The small stellated tricontahedron can then stellate, and then this is these two forms actually are in Coxeter's regular polytope book. Kind of in the middle of the book, he actually has these two forms. They're kind of, before he jumps into 4D forms and 5D and all that, these are like the last two in the books. And this was written in 1973. I think he is really the first one who may have recognized these that we know of. So it's neat to see how they're playing out into this. So what I did here is that these both have dual forms, but what I did was taken the small stellated and the great stellated, because this is what the geometry showed me. And I put those two together to create a I didn't create it, the geometry did. It created a compound of the great and small stellated tricontahedron, which is this. And then when you connect the dots, you're back to another rhombic tricontahedron with this little concavity that's down in the middle here, okay? And that's what these lines would actually be this compound of this small stellated tricontahedron, which is down inside there, the greater and small together. So that's kind of what the structure looks like. There's a lot of lines going here, but I pulled that out so you're able to see the details. Let me just show you from another view here of what the small stellated looks like from the pentagon view. And then this great stellated tricontahedron, which has a tricontahedron in it and these rhombic faces, these diamond-like faces coming out. And those two are fused together like this. And these dotted lines are showing that this is hidden underneath. Both of these structures have hidden vertices, meaning the vertices go into the form. They're not on the outside. So when you continue these lines through, there's actually a vertice that's inside the form. So they call that hidden vertices. So I don't know what this is. I put them together. I don't know if that's a legitimate geometric thing to do, but that's what the star child wanted to do. And it's tough arguing with the child sometimes. So I just went with it. So here we go. We've got the few. I drew this from the few views for everyone to see. We've got the rhombic tricontahedron. You've got the first stellation from this view, the small stellated one over here. And then here's that compound of the great and the small together. And then this is this form. And here they are down at the bottom. Rhombic tricontahedron, first stellation, smaller, greater, and then rhombic tricontahedron. This is an unnamed form to me. Maybe it is one of the tricontahedron stellations. I'm not sure. There's 237 of them, but this is the one I call the star child. And one last view, because it's neat to see what these look like from different perspectives. Definitely a little tricky drawing, lots of lines, but the 5 circles, they give you everything you need. And really, once you start working with 5 circles, you will just be mesmerized by everything that you need to create the form is magically within there. Whenever I think, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to draw this one, bam, they line up to all these vertice points that are given by the phi ratio circles. That's what's given me the ability to even discover how to draw these forms was those templates, because these are highly complex forms with lots of little angles to pull off on the inside. Okay, so once again, I don't need to go through that. That's the forms. And we're going to, just in a moment, because I really went all out for you in this for my 222 presentation. Well, I did a whole zometool construction that I'm going to show you the models in zometool and the zomepad in just a second. We've got this is what they look like in zomepad. Here's the star child. It's a little bit warped from the perspective, so we don't see that perfect hexagonal structure. But these are the square view, pentagon view, and hexagon view. And these are what they would correspondingly look. And of course, I always like to ask people, what view do you kind of resonate? Which one do you feel inclined towards? Things like that. I think it's interesting to contemplate. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share and hop over to zomepad. We're just moving along here. Let me share the zomepad screen and work through these slides here. So the very first thing is our rhombic tricontahedron. We're going to go through them just in the same order. And this is built out of all of the red struts. Now, you're asking, well, yeah, the star mother has the tetrahedron, it's got the cube. Well, the rhombic tricontahedron is like a culminating form of all of those. So I didn't bother to put all those in. You can easily put the cube and the tetrahedron, the octahedron. They're all contained within this. And that's just an easy way to go about seeing the model without too much complexity there. So remember, next thing we do from here is we're going to add in these yellow struts, and this is what creates the first stellation of the rhombic tricontahedron. If I hold it this way, you can see there's a rhombic face, and if I just tilt it back, you could see it's poofed up a little bit, and that's the first stellation. So there it is, the pentagon view, square view, and hexagon view is there. So let's go on to the next one. Whoops, that's the build out. This is the small stellated tricontahedron. And I really like this form, as I said, because it really holds some interesting things in terms of the spirals that are going to be in the non-compressive charge and just the compressive non-destructive charge in just a moment. But here it is from the hexagon view. It's built right into the tricontahedron, and the pentagonal view, and the square view is in here too, like that there. Okay, so the next one. Now, this is a step I didn't talk about, but these vertices you can connect, and that will create the Icosi Dodecahedron, these blue vertices, which is kind of like an icosahedron and a dodecahedron together because it has 20 triangular faces and 12 pentagon faces. And I did that step because the next one, when I do that great rhombic tricontahedron, this one that's coming up, that will, it basically does it on its own, because those red spikes, those red stellations, these red ones and the yellow ones together, they basically just create that seam anyway. They create that Icosi Dodecahedron, they create the seam when they're joined together. So this one is now pretty much just this is like the rhombic tricontahedron, but this is that internal structure that helped us move from the internal rhombic tricontahedron, the first one, to move out to the last one, because now all we're going to do is connect the dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, these points are going to become the rhombic faces. And now this is your star child. There's the 4 points I talked about, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the completed star child. It's just one of many nested star childs that can be placed infinitely within this. But this is now our external hull of the rhombic tricontahedron with the stellation on the inside. And of course, you know, I didn't show these in the models, but once we have the tricontahedron, right, then the next thing we can do is add on the icosahedron, which, you know, there looks like a lot of lines here, but this blue, let's line it up this way. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There's the 20 triangular faces, or the one triangular face. That's the icosahedron, and that's going right through the rhombic face. So that's, remember, every rhombic tricontahedron contains both of those. And then here we are with the dodecahedron. This pentagon face right here is the dodeca that's crossing the icosa. And now that, of course, is the compound of the two with this interstellation process that I've described. So, okay, let's go out of that share. Let me show you these little models. Here's the original rhombic tricontahedron, and we're going to go from here, from this one to this one. And as we do that, we need to stellate this one to the first tricontahedron, first stellation. And then this one is creating that little decagon face, or a little corrugation, and that corrugation matches this corrugation that's going around here. And those are the points that we're going to place these little stellation points on. And this little triangular face, if we connect those dots, would create that Icosi dodecahedron, but that becomes the nesting spot. Well, this is where the other form, the red, is going to poke through on those triangular faces of the great rhombic dodecahedron. So small one, great and small together. It's nice to see another unified form of the great and small together here. And then once those are in place, then we come back to this one here, and this pattern will just infinitely go on. So if you connected yellow to red to yellow, create that rhombic face, that's that right there. And those lines that are going in are essentially these slopes going down to this point in here. And that's the star child. Okay, so I've got some more for you here. You know, like I said, this is an all-out episode for you. So there's a few more forms that I want to share, and I really now want to work on sharing with you more on how this is going to relate to the implosion pattern. So, you know, when I did the Star Mother presentation, the previous one before this, I said, well, you know, it's believed to be the only three-dimensional fractal. It has this nesting embedding of the icosa and dodeca for that non-destructive compressive charge. It's fractal and self-similar across scales. And I also believe that this pattern that I'm showing now is also, the star child is doing the same thing too. They're essentially, it's adding in a few more steps along the way in that stellation process, because this slide is trying to illustrate, here's the original star mother without the stellations in here, dodeca, well, let's start here, dodeca, icosa, dodeca, icosa. And if you follow out, we've got these orangish lines, orange circle, red circle, black circle, orange circle, red circle, black circle. That black circle is kind of not in the pattern, because this when it goes from this stellation here, it's so big to go. It's such a big stellation. It like bypasses from, it goes from here all the way to the next dodeca is this size. So it bypasses this phi circle here. There's nothing wrong with that because these are really the same pattern. You could put the star mother and the star child together. They are together. They're born together. They are one and the same. This is just a little bit of a refinement of that. And that's going to play out in the other models I'm going to show you, because this really starts to display the internal geometry of what I see as what Dan calls the pine cone's kissing noses in the geometry in just a sec. But this here is going from this dodeca, which would be right here. Then the next dodeca would be this rhombic tricontahedron, which is that one. And then this rhombic tricontahedron is connected to that dodeca. And then this rhombic tricontahedron is connected to that dodeca. And then expand that out and infinitely in, and you would have dodeca every single circle of the phi expansion. This one jumps, as I'm saying, from this dodeca to this dodeca, missing these two intermediary dodecas in the middle. So I think there's just a little bit more detail on what's happening on those in-between stages. But here are the star mother with the star child together. They're both fractal. They appear to me, at least, and maybe someone will point this out, what I'm showing with the star child doesn't appear to be fractal, but appears to me to be self-similar across the different scales. It's essentially repeating itself infinitely at every scale. And it does have that infinite non-destructive compression of charge based on the golden ratio. I believe that maintains that throughout this as well. So mother and child here hanging out together. Now here's a sweet little slide that a little way to present this. I call it the infant imploding star children, because just like I remember as a child, my grandmother from Poland had these infinite little Russian dolls. Well, it did end initially, but playing with these, this is one of hers. You take these apart and one's nested within the other, and the little Russian doll, or the Matryoshka doll, it's basically trying to, it's capturing the same idea of the infinite mother containing child over and over again, or child within child within child generationally here. So as I take this apart, I'm going to walk through what is happening here. This one is going out. So these rhombic faces are this one. Okay, so that is at this phase where they are budding out, and they actually, the next one in this phase is now this same rhombic face. It's the same size, but that's the one that's going in. So that is this one. Okay, and that one, drag over here. That's the second one. Those are going in, they're concave. And the cool thing is that the inner one will match up with this one that is pointing out. So this face, this point, meets that point of the inner one. And this is, I'll show you this model in more detail. This is the outer facing stellated tricontahedron. Same one going inside will meet the next one of the smaller rhombic tricontahedron in it. The one that's going out, the one that's expanding, will meet the one that's going in. And then this one goes in on this level to meet the one that's going out. So they all touch and link up inside. So let me just walk through this. I kind of explained the main point, but like I said, this is the infinite imploding children. And if, star child, they're going to keep going. That's the out. This is the inner one. And this inner one is going to link up with this one that is expanding out. So that's the one that's expanding out. This one is now going in, going in, and this one is now expanding out, and it's going to touch those vertices of the larger one that's going in. And then this one is going to go out or yes, no, that's the inner one. That's the inner one, because this one is expanding out. This one is going in. This one is the expanding out that's connecting to this one. And this one here is connected to that one. And then we have a nice little infinite spiral pattern that will go on infinitely of outer to in, and they're all touched up, touching one another internally throughout that whole process. Star child after star child after star child after star child, the same continuous pattern of those inner and outer expansion, just based on this caduceus type of pattern that I just showed you here, which is looking like that from the top. Okay, so let's, I think in my next few slides, explain that in a little bit more detail. So let's check those out. Here it is. Yes, this is what I'm showing you. That is looking at it from the square view, and it's actually contained in a square, which is the face of a cube. You could fit this whole thing in a cube. I'm going to save all that for another video about how this all relates to the cube. Yeah, this is the rhombic faces, these diamond faces that are going in. We're looking at this essentially is this. This is turned to the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the and these are this one would be, let's say, the large face up top here. And now picture this one inside it, and that little rhombic face there that's pointing up, that's this one right here that touches that one. And then this one also has an inner one that looks like this that's touching the next one. So I hope I made that point clear. I think it's totally fascinating, very cool to see how this internal geometry has a structure to it, with every phi circle that, like I showed you in those implosion patterns, this is going through every phi circle that starts sequentially and follows the golden mean progression throughout the whole thing. Okay, so now we're going to switch to another view. So that's showing us one angle of it. But this other little form that I'll show you both of these close up, this kind of diamond structure here is this pine cone. It kind of looks like a pine cone to me. It's equal spin on it, but if we were just to twist it a little bit, it would have an unequal spin, more like a pine cone would. But this is this diamond-shaped structure, and this face of it, one face, is part of that small rhombic tricontahedron, which is this one. Which, remember I said I really like this one? This is why I really love this one, because this little face, this little cone, basically, this little cone shape right here contains this zigzag pattern, which I'm trying to show over top right here, which is basically a braiding that will go on infinitely compressed to the center. This is supposed to be the three-dimensional object. Just one of those little cones, this is a giant one of those little cones, that will not only go inward to the center. So picture this one going into the center of this structure. So this is concave, this right here, this little 3D structure right here. It looks like a flower. These are going in, which is basically this little cone fitting in and going that way. But I could turn this little cone around, and the same thing, when I turn it around, will fit on top of this and go out. So we have it going in both directions. It feels like this was the form that I've been hoping to find all throughout my whole searching and all this, because now I have something that's infinitely expanding outward and going inward with the same geometric structure that's in golden mean proportion throughout every single level of this, which is just so cool. And this one's just showing that, you know, the drawings of this is what brought me to this, you know, really working with the phi circle diagram, you know, discovering how to draw this and then translating over to the hand. I'm not following any cutout on that. This is really just the geometry of the hand-drawn material coming to life off the page. And then I realized that, you know, Coxeter in 1973 is drawing that same, there it is, that's the same form from the same view that I'm showing you right here in this image. And this is now the easy sacred geometry that you can do to draw this too, which is very cool. Okay, well, I'm going to show you all those in just a bit, a little bit more closely. This is, in hand. These are those pictures of that little pine cone shaped segment of the small tricontahedron here, stellated one, this little thing. This is looking at it from the top here. So you're looking at infinite compression coming towards you. And then if we turn it around, you're looking at that infinite compression going down in. And that little braid of zigzag that goes through that is on each of these faces. And those are all part of the tricontahedron, basically. So I started to draw this, and all of a sudden I realized that these zigzag patterns were just part of the tricontahedron creating that pattern of infinite compression in the center. So this tricontahedron, I feel, really displays just the geometry of the star child. The star child is really, really displaying that infinite compression to the center. This reminds me a lot of Dan Winter's imploder water nozzle, for watering plants or shower head. I'm probably certain that this is the same 5 proportion circles that go through this to create that implosive pattern where the water comes out and is charged with the golden ratio implosion as it moves through that nozzle, which he has documented having lots of benefits for our human, for being a human being, watering ourselves, as well as the plant growth and things like that. But you could check out his material on that. So here's the infinite imploding star children from the side. This is another view that I opened up to me. And once it did, I was able to draw from this angle, which, is a tricky drawing. It's not as easy to do with circles, a lot more with the straight lines. But it's showing that we've got the dodeca-Icosi compound expanding out. Here's just 2 levels. And then if we turn those into the tricontahedron, a tricontahedron within inside a tricontahedron, it's like you kind of have a bit of an X-ray vision here to the smaller tricontahedron into the inside there. Okay, we're moving into the final stages here. This last series of slides is similarly connected to my work with Dan's material on the DNA, and I was working with that of how that energy moves through the human body as well, as a braided, nested fractal pattern contained within those spirals. Well, here, you stack the dodecahedron on top of one another. That's what DNA is, from some researchers' view, meant to look like, is stacked dodecahedron on top of one another. So I decided to stack the dodecahedron, but maintain that icosahedron, tricontahedron compound, and just let the internal geometry work itself out on the inside and maintain the 5 proportion throughout. They overlap a bit here, but not all the geometry is just going to be face to face. There's lots of interpenetration. I guess that's how creation happens. So we've got these dodeca and Icosi together. Here's the tricontahedron going through, stacked on top of one another with the slight phi ratio penetration through the penetrating one another through the middle here. And I decided, I always love to do this within my videos. I like to see how the pattern looks when we put a person inside these stacked triconahedron. We can have a big triconahedron around us. We can have a little tiny triconahedron all through us. It's just so many ways to relate. But I made these 5 spirals. I have another video on this where I took the golden mean spiral and I looked at it from a side view of what that would look like. And I came up with 2 versions of that I overlaid as a composite here. And I just happened to line them up. I said, well, let me not line it up on the dodecahedron. I'll line it up on the triconahedron. And I just saw that when you put 2 of them together, it really nicely kind of outlined the body. And then when I layered each of those on every triconahedron, I love just seeing the braided caduceus going through the middle at nearly just every chakra, that chakra here that's going through throat, third eye, out through the crown, And, this type of imagery for me really kind of connects it and brings it back to, how can I visualize, relate, feel the energetics through my body and recognize that I am embedded in this fractal pattern, not from a mental level, but using the mental level as well as the felt body sense to have it all integrate into a more embodied perspective of relating to all of creation. This is just that braided caduceus type of pattern, similar to, this was in my mom's bookmark. It's so cool to see the patterns were all around me. But here it is the two intertwined, I guess these are geese in this one, but the two intertwined geese heads or serpents going up, creating that overlapping. It's the Ida and Pingala and Sushumna. These are classic images, and it's about infinitely non-destructive compressive charge. The Kundalini Shakti moving through the energetic body is working within this braided network. And I'd say this is the last slide I just added this morning because I think this one is what, kind of really brings it home, is that this is, fractally embedding at multiple scales. And I'm just stopping at Earth here, but we can continue on out at every point in space, every little atomic structure, this nesting or phi harmonic ratio. Dan has a whole scale that shows from the smallest Planck scale all the way out to the largest, following the golden mean proportion throughout that, where different things show up along that, from solar system to ATP. You'd have to check out the list. I can't remember everything that's on it, but it was quite a cool scale structure. But this is this infinite compression charge, recognizing that we're part of this fractal system and finding our own energetic beingness of how we embed into the whole, especially here on our planet Earth, this infinite love and expansion into the heart center, recognizing that this is all of us, and much more than this, and that we're all part of this. This geometry reflects that. It's pointing away, it's showing you a way. You are this geometry. Recognizing, connecting with it is one way, but ultimately it comes down to all those little micro changes within life that really align us fully. What are all those changes that start to align us completely is as a non-destructive charge on Earth that's embedding into a whole, and we're all working on finding and discovering what that is. And I think that geometry like this, and like Dana has been presenting and other geometers, is really pointing us in that direction to this visual imagery, which is now connected to the scientific, connected to the spiritual elements of things, connected to our psychological, emotional things, the sacred geometry braided and nested throughout all of that. And we're just finding our way, finding our kind of niche in our pattern of how our own beingness aligns and structures with that. So, when I look at something like this one here, which is just essentially, one piece of this structure here, that's the cool thing for me, was discovering that just this top point here is essentially that piece of just one point, and that if I were able to put 12 of these together, I would essentially come up with this. But when you look straight down at this spiraling pattern that's going into the center, maybe you could see it better this way. Every red crossing, this zigzag, you can basically follow around with your finger as I turn this around till it reaches the center. This is that implosive charge. This is the embedding non-destructively that will infinitely expand in the center. I did cap it off here, but you could see it's just pentagon faces infinitely going throughout this. And I tried to illustrate the spiral. I isolated it just a little bit for you as I took one of those spiral branchings. And of course, spirals are not just straight lines like this. This is kind of, some curvature would be to this, but this is, and I don't know how it'll look two-dimensionally on your screen, but this is in one sequence of one of those spirals that are kind of going down into the center, just made out of the zometool. each of these little segments that you see here are part of a geometric structure of a Icosi dodecahedron within that. The other very cool one that I was sharing there too was this rhombic face one, which, you know, very much looks to me like another version of the caduceus there, with the crisscross going up, expanding out, coming back to the center, the vertical line through the center. This is the golden ratio rhombic faces, and each one of these are a tricontahedron face, a star child going through. And remember, each one of these, the upper ones are this form, and the other portion of the star child that's meeting are these going down into the inside. And this is the rhombic tricontahedron. If we just put this, blew this out, like blew this up, puffed into it, and expanded it out, that little thing would flip over to the other side, and that would be up here. And they all are linked and connected all the way through the center, infinitely to the center. This is just another little model. If I could get it out here. Gosh, I'm just surrounded with models here. This one here is a portion of this. There's 3 levels within this tricontahedron. I took out all the internal star child structure of those stellations, but you could see that this is the 3 rhombic tricontahedrons, 1, 2, 3. And as I said, the only difference in Dan's model than the star mother pattern here, which is this one here, is that each of those 5 proportions are being kind of maintained. Each circle on my drawing is maintained as we expand out there. Whereas this stellation, which is beautiful because it's still part of that pattern, it's not part of the star child, the mother and the child. The child is in the in-between spots here, you know, as it becomes a mother over here, and then the child's in between, and then the mother again. You can think of it like that if you like, but that's where the child would be in the middle. Here would be a child down here, which is the mother here, child, mother, child, mother, which are all children, have been children at some point. So, okay, that was, you know, pretty much the full-on work that I've been working on for about a week and a half on this, that literally came the next day after putting the Star Mother video out. You know, I love these two together. This is the inner, this is the outer. These two are the same, in to out. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all that I wanted to share on this special 22222 day, and which adds up 10, right? And that had a lot for me to do with the exploration of the decagon, because all this has been made with the decagon structure, the 10 points within this that go around to create these conical caps. It was a little more than just the pentagon with the 5 points of the dodecahedron. The other forms came in, rounded it out, and I felt like I was a midwife over here for the past couple weeks, or for longer than that, but this really came to be birthed within the past week and a half, the Star Child. So welcome to Star Child. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate you checking this out. You know, subscribe if you like the channel. Check out my new geometry Patreon. Check out my new geometry website. And I just thank you, and much love to you, and blessings on your day. Have a fantastic day, and peace.